Hello friends, today we'll see the installation of storage area network, that is SAN, and these steps of the storage area network installation can be applied while installing 10G Oracle Grid Infrastructure release 1 or release 2, or 11G release 1 release 2 and 12C release 1 and release 2. So the steps will remain the same, though there are various other methods of using different types of storage options that we have, but I haven't included that. I might be including that in the other videos, but in this video I'll be taking you through the SAN installation, that is the storage area network, so that all the nodes that you're going to create will access storage area network as a centralized place. Okay, so let us start understanding or the steps to install storage area network with the help of a software called OpenFiler. So I am using a virtual machine. I'll have to create a new virtual machine. Let the custom advanced be selected. Click on next. Click on next again. I'll have to locate the option so this is a 64-bit OpenFiler setup, and 32-bit would be a little different. I have included that in my other video. You can please refer to that if you are installing a 32-bit, but 64-bit is actually recommended, so please use 64-bit. That is better than compared to 32. You'll select other, another 64-bit. If you're using 32-bit, you can use other. If you're using 64, then it's 64. You can give your machine's name, that is SAN. Then you can give the location. You don't have to change anything over here. Click on next. 512 MB of RAM would be sufficient for this, I believe. So if you would want to increase the RAM, if you have enough RAM available for at your system, then you can go ahead and give it as 1 GB as well. I would give it as 512 only, and I'll click on next. Let's use host networking. This is recommended, so let that be as it is. This is also recommended, so just don't do anything here. Click on next. Create a new virtual disk. Store disk as a single file. I'll allocate 12 GB. Click on next. Click on next again. That's it. Click on finish. So under virtual machine you have a new machine called SAN, that is the storage area network. We will start configuring it. I'll click on power on. Okay, I'll hit enter now. Okay, so the page is up. You just have to click on next. select the language English. It says the partition table on the device was unreadable. Do you want to erase the last line? Would you like to initialize this drive erasing all the data? Click on yes. You'll use create custom layout over here, then you'll click on next. So this is where we can see the 12 GB of space that we have allocated for storage area network, or basically for the SAN partitions that we are going to create. So let us start creating the partitions now. It is actually it is pretty similar. It looks like we use it in the Linux operating system. So how much is the leftover space? 3 GB. I'll fill it to the maximum allowable size. It is basically recommended, or a regular method that we use is, if I have given 1 GB of RAM to the machine, then I'll have to assign the swap memory double of it. So I'll have to assign the swap memory as 2 GB. Over here I have given 512 MB and I am actually assigning 3 GB. So it actually doesn't matter. There are various ways for this to configure. So you can actually, if you're running out of memory, just give the double of it. So like I have given 512, you can give 1 GB. I have enough space, so I am just allocating as much as I want. Click on OK then. Alright, some space is still left over. So how much did actually swap take? The double of the size. That's it. 512 is what I have allocated, and it took 1000. Oh, that's fine. We'll click on next. It says, as you don't have much memory in this machine, we need to turn on swap immediately. Okay, yes. ext Linux bootloader will be installed on DEV SDA. We don't use ext Linux in this context because we are using an ISO image. We will only use ext Linux whenever we have CDs available with us and we are doing the installation with the help of the CDs, the disks basically. So we don't have CDs as of now. We are using an ISO image. So we'll select the grub bootloader and I'll click on next. We'll have to set up the IP address for this, which will be I'll have to uncheck this. I'll click on OK. I have to mention the machine's name over here and the domain name. So it's san.cluster.com. I'll click on next now. It says you have not specified the field gateway. So do you see something called as gateway over here where my mouse pointer is? So I haven't specified gateway, primary DNS, or secondary DNS. I am actually not going to use this. So I'm actually not bothered. I can just go ahead and click on continue. It again asks me for the primary DNS that I haven't specified. I say okay, continue. You have to select the time zone, that is Calcutta, Asia. You have to assign the password here. Click on next. Click on next again. So let's wait for the open filer to format the file system for storage area network. And one more thing that I would like to include, as I said, this is something we can actually consider as a prerequisite for rack Oracle Grid infrastructure setup. Like we have a prerequisite of installing a Linux operating system, and then creating users and groups, and setting up SSH connectivity and things like that. All these things are actually prerequisites. So this stands at the number one prerequisite, because we have to install and configure storage area network right before we start doing anything else. So it says time remaining 5 minutes. I think I'll have to put a momentary pause on this video so that this gets installed, and then we'll see what we are supposed to do. Okay, so it says congratulations, the installation is complete. I have to reboot the system. Before I click on reboot, I need to add another disk over here, so that that particular disk which I'm going to add will act as a storage. And that is something very important for us to understand, that storage area network will have a disk, and a type of disk called iSCSI, that is small computer system interface. So I have selected this hard disk. iSCSI is what I'm going to use. I'm clicking on next, create a new virtual disk, show a virtual disk as a single file. I'll give it as 60 GB. I can later divide this to 40 or 30 GB to data and 30 GB to OCR and voting disk. So that is the reason I am creating it. So whatever database and data files and control files and SP file and ASM, everything will get stored on this, because this is a storage area network. So I hope you all understand this. I'll click on finish. So I have another hard disk added over here. 12 GB is already assigned and is in use with the storage area network. Hard disk is 60 GB that we are going to see how are we going to use it. We have to create volumes and all soon after we access the storage area network through GUI. So I'll click on OK. Alright, so now when it reboots with 2 disks. That is the reason I have added the disk right before I could start rebooting it. I'll click on reboot now. It's starting, it's taking some time, so let us wait until it starts. Okay, so this is how the SAN actually looks like, and you can actually log in to SAN as well, but it is not required because we have to access it through GUI. As you can see it over here, web administration GUI, graphical user interface. So soon after I create the Linux machine, I'll have to get onto this and I'll create volumes, because you can't do it from here. You have to enable iSCSI service, iSCSI target service, and a lot of other things as such, like access control link and things like that. So you cannot do it from here, therefore you need to access the GUI mode of storage area network, which we'll see quickly after installing the Linux. So this is how you actually install the storage area network. and the storage area network is ready for you, and if you want to access it, you need to have another node or a machine with an operating system installed on it, so that you can access the graphical user interface mode of it. So that's all about installing SAN. We'll continue with the other videos wherein we'll see the rest of the prerequisite steps to configure Oracle Grid infrastructure. So that's all about SAN as of now. Okay, thank you. So in the previous video we have completed the installation of SAN, that is the storage area network. Now the next prerequisite would be to install the Linux operating system. So the installation part of Linux operating system I haven't included in this video because it is as same as we've been doing in the previous videos. So the Linux operating system installation will still remain the same. Just few things that would change in the Linux operating system installation or the machine creation would be 3 GB RAM is what we are supposed to give this time, and network host adapter or the network adapter, that is an extra network adapter when we compare it to the 11G release 2. In 12C release 1 we need to have an extra adapter added to the existing two adapters. So let me just show it to you. So we have three network adapters this time. Network adapter 1 will actually work as a public or probably will be used for the public IP, and the second one would be for private purpose, that is a private network, that is a private IP. And then we have something new in 12C release 1 called as ASM network. So it will have to occupy a separate IP section for which we need to have a third network adapter. So if you have two network adapters and if you want to add a third network adapter, so let us consider an example over here. I'll try to add another adapter so you can follow the same thing. Even after you create the virtual machine, even after you install the Linux operating system, and if you don't create it while the installation of Linux operating system, you can do it from here after the machine has been created. Okay, so I'll click on add. By highlighting this, I'll have to select network adapter. I'll click on next. I'll select host only. I'll click on finish. Okay, so this way I have 4 network adapters now. So in the similar way, while you see only 2 adapters after the installation of the Linux operating system, you can add another host adapter that will play as a role of ASM network. So I'll also have to click on OK. So I have 4 network adapters now. So I was just giving you a demo over here how to add a third network adapter. So I don't need the 4th network adapter. I'll just have to delete it. Okay, so that is the reason, because everything in the Linux operating system installation is still the same, like we've done it in 11G release 2. So I haven't included the Linux operating system installation. I straight away have continued the video from here. So I have 4 nodes set up over here, and all the 4 nodes, 3 GB RAM is something which is mandatorily required to be given if you are trying to install 12C release 1 grid infrastructure on a virtual machine. And the reason why we are required to have 4 nodes is because I am particularly focusing on a feature called Flex ASM that is newly added in 12C release 1, and we will not be able to take the advantage of the feature Flex ASM if we don't have 4 nodes. Since it runs on 3 nodes only, I have a separate explanation part of it, so I will not explain it again in this video. Please refer to that video. So Flex ASM is something you can only take the advantage of if you have 4 nodes or 4 machines in your cluster. You can even install 12C release 1 on a 2 node setup, but while you're installing 12C release 1 on a 2 node setup, then you may not be able to take the advantage of Flex ASM feature, nor will you be able to see its functionality. So I'd rather recommend, if even if you're practicing, then you should have a 4 node setup, so that you can actually see how does this ASM Flex ASM feature actually works. So I'll have to start the nodes now, since we have SAN installation done in the previous video, that like we've seen it. So we are left over with starting the nodes, all the 4 nodes, and then we'll continue with the prerequisites before we start getting on to the installation of 12C release 1. So I'll have to start all the 4 machines. Okay, so we have all the 4 nodes up now. There are few prerequisites, as I said, and then we'll be able to start installing or concentrating towards the grid infrastructure installation. But right now we need to set up the IP addresses correctly in the etc hosts. So let me check that first. So we have ETH0, ETH1 and ETH2. So let us just check what do we have in ETH1 is correctly set, so we don't have to make any changes here. ETH0, then ETH1, everything is correctly set here as well. Now we'll check ETH2. This is for ASM network, and I have separate explanation video for the IP addresses and their classes and the subnet masks that we are required to set. So please refer to that video right before you start using the IP addresses. Okay, so looks like everything is correctly set over here. We need to check it on the node 2, then on 3, and then on 4, because I have in the environment of virtual machine, to be more specific, I have cloned node 1 and created a node 2 and then 3 and 4. So these nodes will also have the stamps of node 1 only. You can see it over here, it still shows as node 1. So we need to change this right before we proceed with any further step. We'll first of all check it over here. Let us start with ETH0. Okay, it has no IP address mentioned over here, so we'll have to change it. So right before we change it, we need to deactivate it. Same applies to ETH1 and ETH2. We don't need the backup, so I'll start deleting the ETH0 backup, then ETH1, then ETH2. So I'll start editing ETH0 first. This is the public IP address. So what it is actually supposed to be, it's 147.43.0.2, then 255.255.0.0. Okay, so this setup and the subnet mask that we are assigning over here, as I just mentioned, that I have a separate video for this, so please refer to that, and then you will be able to understand why are we supposed to give 255, 255, 0 and 0 and things like that. Okay. So this is the public IP address, 147.43.0.2. Since we have mentioned 0.1 in the first node, it will obviously differ from the first node's IP address. Now let us edit ETH1. This is the private IP address, so it will be 192.168.0.2, and the subnet mask would be 255 or 255 or 255 or 0. Okay, I'll Click on OK now. Now comes ETH2. This is the ASM network IP address. This is the ASM IP basically. So this will be 192.168.1.1. Then the subnet mask will remain the same because the private IP address 255 or 255 or 255.0. Alright, I'll click on OK now. I need to check the DNS. It still says node1.cluster.com. I'll have to change it to node2. I don't need the primary DNS, and the DNS search path would be cluster.com. That's all, no more changes required. I can activate these Ethernet cards now. Alright, I got an error over here. It says cannot activate network device ETH2 error, and the error message is some other host already uses address 192.168.1.1. So I was supposed to mention 1.2 over here because 1.1 is being used on node 1 already. So I'll click on OK. I'll edit this again and I'll change it to 1.2. Okay, now I'll try to activate it, and this time it surely will get activated. Okay, so all the Ethernet adapters that I have for this machine are active now. Okay, and the DNS path is also set. So I'll just close this, and I'll have to get onto the third node now, and I'll have to repeat the same steps, just that the IP address would be different. I'll have to get into the network attributes. I'm deleting the backups. So I'll get into ETH0 now. I don't see any IP address over here, which is the public IP address, so I'll change it 147.43.0.3, 255.255.0.0. Then I'll get into ETH1. I have, this is the private network, so I'll give it as 192.168.0.3, then 255.255.255.0. Then ETH2, it should be 192.168.1.3. It's 255.255.255.0. Alright, let me check the ETH0 again. Okay, so what I'm left over with now is the DNS. I'll have to change it quickly from node1.cluster.com to node3.cluster.com. Primary DNS is not required, and the domain name should be cluster.com. That's it. So I'll have to activate all of these. Okay, that's it. Now I'll close it. I have to do this something similar to the node 4 as well. I will delete the backups first. Okay, I'll have to deactivate it first. So ETH 0, 1 and 2 all are inactive. Now I can delete the backups of those. I'll get into ETH 0 and I'll start editing it. So this is the public IP, as we all know by now. It's 147.43.0.4 since it's the fourth node. ETH1. This is the private IP. So 192.168.0.4, 255 or 255 or 255.0. I'll click on OK. Then ETH2, 192.168.1.4, 255 or 255 or 255.0. That's all again. It reflects as node 1. I'll change it to node 4. I don't need this. I'll change local domain to cluster.com because that's the domain name I am using, or the DNS search path. So that's it. I'll have to activate this now. I'll activate ETH0, then ETH1, then the ETH2. Okay, all are active. I'll close this. You might see that node 1 has been changed. You might see that it's even on node 2. I'm on node 2. It still shows as node 1 over here and node 1 over here. So I'll just have to exit and I'll open the new terminal again just to avoid this confusion while installing. It still shows as node 1 over here. I'll have to now node 2 is what it is reflecting over here. Since we have changed the IP addresses of this machine, we just have to change the terminal. If you restart the machine, it won't show as node 1 anymore, but just for I cannot restart and I cannot take much time over here, so I'll manually write it as node 2. Same applies to node 3. Alright, if you restart the machine, you won't have to set this manually. It's just because I don't want to restart the machines and consume more time. I am just putting it manually. Okay, all set. Node 3, node 2 and node 1, excuse me. So now the next thing that I'm supposed to do now would be checking the etc hosts file, where I'll have all the IP addresses set. I don't see anything inside the etc host because I haven't set anything manually, which I'll do now. Okay, so I'll put a momentary pause on this video until I add all the IP addresses, and then after I add all the IP addresses that are required for the cluster setup, I'll explain each of those right before we proceed. Okay, so now we have the IP addresses set in the etc hosts file. Okay, so like if we compare it with the 11g release 2 IP address setup, public IP address will still remain the same. There are no changes in it. Okay, the highlighted section. And private IP address is also the same. There are no changes in it either. Now we have something new, since we are about to complete the prerequisite right before installing the 12c Oracle Grid infrastructure. There is something called as ASM IP, for which I have set or configured an extra Ethernet adapter. If you remember, if you go back to the previous videos, so we have something called as ASM IP. So ASM IP, as I said, I also have recorded what class do the IP addresses actually belong to, and how do we actually have to set them up. So you have to please refer to that video to understand how do we set up the ASM IP, or at least follow this video, use the same IP addresses. I think that will be more than enough. Okay, so in the etc hosts we have something new, that is the ASM IP. So this is how we set the ASM IP in the etc hosts file. And then virtual IP, it is as same as it was before. There are no changes, and the scan will also remain the same. So it is just that we have something new, since the 12c release 1 is the ASM IP and nothing else. So always remember, whenever you're setting up a prerequisite for 12c release 1 installation, you have to make sure that you need to have ASM IP. Unless and until you don't set the ASM IP, you won't be able to let the functionality of Flex ASM work properly in the cluster environment. Therefore, it won't be of any use for having Flex ASM installed, or the functionality would actually not be so very productive, or it will not work at all. So ASM IP is something which is absolutely mandatory. So please remember, you need to set this up. So let us quickly recheck all the IP addresses if they are correctly set, right from public to the scan. Okay, looks like everything is fine. I'll just save this and quit. I'll have to copy this etc hosts file to the other nodes in the cluster. So I'll begin with node 2. I haven't established the SSH connectivity yet, that's why maybe we'll do it later, soon after we complete this the major prerequisites, I would say. Okay, looks like there's some problem with node 4. It is not accepting the connection, but node 2 and node 2, we were successfully able to send the etc hosts file on node 2 and node 3. It is 100% done. We'll first of all check. Okay, so the etc hosts reflects the same as it is there on node 1. We'll check it on node 3 as well. Alright, perfect. So let us see what's wrong with the node 4. Okay, looks like ETH0 is inactive. Okay, I might have forgotten to activate it. Let me try to reconnect now. I think I should be able to. Alright. So the problem was with the ETH0 being inactive, which I have just activated. Okay, so now on the fourth node, the etc hosts file has been copied successfully. Let us cross check. Alright, that's all. Now since we have all the IP addresses set and identical on all the nodes, so that nodes can contact with each other and they can have this similar information. That is what they're supposed to have. Now we'll have to access the SAN, this one, through node 1 with the mode called GUI, that is the graphical user interface, so that we can create the volumes and activate the iSCSI services and various things like that. So let us start accessing that with Firefox. So this is the IP address of storage area network. Okay, if it is difficult for you to identify where exactly is that mentioned, you can get on to SAN and you can find it over here. It's 147. This is the exact thing that you have to add in while you're trying to access SAN through GUI. That is what it says, web administration GUI. So if you want to administer SAN using graphical user interface, please use https 147.43.0.5:446/. So that's the same IP address that I used. Okay, it's just that I did not give 2 forward slashes over here. That's all. I'll hit enter. Username for the open filer would be open filer and the password is password. Okay, now this page that you see on the screen is actually the page that gives you the information of 147.43.0.1. This is the graphical user interface of the SAN that we have created. Okay, so for more details you can see it over here. We have created the mount points. If you remember, if you go back to the previous videos, you will be able to see all these mount points creation and stuff like that. And so in the SAN that there was another disk, that was iSCSI disk, that we have added. That is something which will have to focus on to create partitions into it and various other things. So we'll see what do we have inside system. Okay, so under system we need to add all the nodes that are currently going to be the part of the cluster. So we have 4 nodes over here: node 1, node 2, node 3 and node 4. So we have to add all the nodes that are going to access SAN. Okay, so let us start with node 1. So now it's node1.cluster.com 2, 3 and 4 with their IP addresses, the public IP addresses to be more specific. That's all. I have included all the information of the nodes that was required. I will get on to the other tab which says volumes. Alright, so over here I don't see any physical volume that is still added. That's what it says. No existing physical volumes were found, or all existing physical volumes are used. You can create a new physical volume. So I'll have to create a new physical volume. So I'll click on this link. Alright, so what is it telling me now? It says DEBSDA, NSDB, and SDB is of 60 GB, and it has 0 partitions. SDA is already in use, one which we've used for creating SAN, and the rest of the components for SAN. So it has 6 partitions already, so we're not bothered about that any further. We are bothered about creating further partitions inside the SDB. So I'll click on DEBSDB here. Okay, so I'll have to click on create now. I don't have to do any modifications. I just have to click on create. Excuse me. Okay, so the partition has been created now. And it says it is in use. Now I'll have to get into the manage volumes tab over here. So I'm into manage volumes tab now. I need to create a put a new volume group name over here. So I'll add a volume group. I'll put as VOLGR OUP, and the physical volume that I would want to add is 57 GB. So I'll have to check this box, and I'll have to click on add volume group. Okay, it is taking some time to add the volume group. As we can see it over here, it says waiting, and it's about to finish. Alright, now we'll get into the different tab called services. We need to locate or find the iSCSI target service. It says the boot status of this service is disabled. So we need to enable it by clicking on enable. Okay, now the boot status shows us enabled. If you want to disable it, again you can click on disable, but you don't have to disable it. And the current status of the service is actually stopped. The service is just enabled but not started, so you have to click on start. Alright, now the service is running. That's it. We'll get back to the volumes tab again. I'll click on add volume. Okay, so what is the volume name? The volume group that I've created is VOLGROUP vol group, and under that I need to specify a volume name. So I'll be specifying it as volume 1. Then why am I using it for? It's just for rack, or you can mention it as for cluster or anything as such. Required space, I would occupy all the space at a time, and the file system would be iSCSI, and I'll have to click on create. Okay, so the volume group and the volume has been created now, and this is how it will reflect over here. Okay, now I have to select iSCSI targets from here. Something called as target IQN I'll have to add so that I can get the number reflected again over here. Alright, and I don't have to change anything over here. I'll straight away have to get into the LUN mapping now. I have to map the LUN, that is the logical unit number. So this is the logical unit number which you can see, and now we'll get into the network access control list. So these nodes are will still not be able to access the SAN storage until I do not change it from deny to allow. So I'll have to allow them all. So all the 4 nodes will now, node 1, 2, 3 and 4, will be able to access the SAN. Alright, it is done now. We have to log out from the OpenFiler GUI mode. I'll close this. Alright, so I need to check if I'm able to access the number, the IQN number. So I'll have to check it on all the nodes by typing iSCSI adm-m discovery -t. -t actually stands for type, and st stands for send targets, -p again, and the number of SAN. So it gives me the IQN number. So this is where my node 1 is. This is what my node 1 is actually accessing. Okay, I'll similarly have to check the same thing on node 2. Node 2 also gives me the same information. Node 3 also gives the same information. Same applies to the node 4 as well. Okay, so as an output, this is what the command should show. If it doesn't show, then it's like any of these nodes are not successfully mapped to access SAN. So please make sure this number should reflect, and then you can restart the iSCSI service. That is pretty important, or else you will not be able to use any other feature, or probably you will not be able to uh, you know access the partition. So I will have to start the iSCSI service now. I mean, the restart the iSCSI service. Now if I check fdisk-l, devsdb is the partition that we have created, which is still not divided into furthermore disk groups and all those things. So uh, I can I can actually see it from here, and it says it doesn't contain a valid partition table. All right. So if I type in fdisk-l over here, it won't show devsdb. It only shows devsda over here, right? Because I haven't restarted the iSCSI service like I did on the node 1 over here, right? So I am mandatorily required to restart the iSCSI service. Now we'll see the difference. I'll use this command fdisk-l. Now I'll be able to access this. So that is the reason I use iSCSI service restart. Same applies to this node as well. So on all the nodes should be able to access the storage area network. That is the reason, and the partitions as well. So that is the reason we have to specify this or restart the iSCSI service. Until the iSCSI service restarts on node 3, I'll also use it on node 4. I think it is done on node 3. Okay. Alright, done on node 4 as well. I don't have to check it. It's better if I do. Okay, devsdb shows here. I didn't check it on node 3. I'll check it on node 3 as well. devsdb is showing here as well. So now we have to create the partitions. We'll start creating the partitions now in devsdb, because we are going to use devsdb that we have added and created volumes and partitions in. So it is devsdb. I'll use fdisk devsdb. I'll have to create a new partition, primary partition. So I'll use p, hit enter. Partition number is 1. I will not use the first cylinder value. I'll leave it blank. Over here I'll give it as 40 GB. I'll create another partition, primary of course, hit enter. Partition number 2, I'll leave the first cylinder value as blank. I'll add 20 GB. Now I'll save so that disks can sync. Okay, syncing disks, read the partition table. So 40 GB is what I'm going to use in the near future while creating the disk groups for storing the data, and 20 GB is what I'll use for OCR and voting disk. Okay, so now let me check again fdisk-l if the partitions are reflecting. Under devsdb there is a partition sdb1 which I have just created of 40 GB and sdb2 of this 20 GB. So this is the partition of 40 GB and actual format, this is the 20 GB. It still shows 19.5 change GB, but it is partition that I just created, and a 40 GB over here. Okay, so same should reflect over here as well, fdisk-l. Okay, so the partitions are reflecting here. Same applies to node 3. We'll just for a cross check, it's better if we check it on all the nodes. Alright, So now we need to let the OS kernel know about the partition table changes by requesting the operating system to reread the partition table, for which we'll use part probe. Okay, dev sdb. Okay, now we have completed this step of creating the partitions and all. So we'll straight away move on to create the users. So right before I create the users, I'll have to delete the default users. There is okay, that's also I might have a user called dva. Okay, so I'll start creating the users now, the OS groups and users for the grid infrastructure. Okay, so I need to have oinstall, a group called oinstall, operating system group. This will actually help me. This will actually store the Oracle inventory group, so users in this group can actually install and upgrade the Oracle binaries. So I'll create this group. So the next group that I will have now would be DBA, and DBA will actually have sysdba privileges, and users in this group will have the privilege to manage various databases. Okay, now I'll have another group called Oper, and this group will actually have the sysoper privilege, so that users can start up and shut down the database instances whenever they want to. So I am creating a group called Oper. Now there is another group that I will create. It'll be ASM DBA, and this group will get sysdba privilege for ASM, so that ASM instances can be managed by the users. So it will be ASM DBA. Okay, now comes ASM admin group, and this will actually get the sysasm privilege, so that users in this group can mount and dismount these groups and other storage administration privileges. So it is ASM admin now. Okay, I haven't given the right ID, so it gave me an error. It is supposed to be 5005. Alright, ASM admin. And now the last one is ASM Oper, and this group will actually get sys Oper privileges for ASM and users under, and the users under this group can actually start and shut down the ASM instances. So ASM Oper, that's all. Now I'm supposed to create users. So a grid user is what I'll create, and should be this user should be used to install grid software and grid user will actually own and run Oracle clusterware and Oracle ASM. Some components will run with the user privileges. OInstall should actually be the primary group over here, and I'll explain it to you while I'm creating this in detail. Okay, so let us start creating the user now. So the primary group over here, as I said, will be OInstall, and then the secondary groups, I mean ASM admin and ASM DBA and DBA should be the secondary groups. So these three groups will actually be the secondary groups, and OInstall, as it is already mentioned, will remain as primary group. Okay, so install being the primary group, and these are being the secondary groups: ASM admin, ASM DBA, and DBA. All right, now we'll change the ownership and that stuff. Alright, I have changed the password and all that stuff that is required to be done, and to proceed further we'll have to install I mean not install, but create the same users and the groups, that is the groups and the users on the node 2, 3 and 4. Alright, so let us start doing that. Okay, so all the users have been created now, and the groups that were required as a prerequisite on all the nodes. So I have completed it on the first node, and repeat the same steps on node 2, 3 and 4. Now what we are supposed to look at is the RPM installation. That is something important, that is ASM RPMs. So I have the ASM RPMs shared. I actually have to get it onto the shared folder, so I'm currently doing that. So I'll have to keep the shared folders always enabled. Now I'll get into cd mount host guest file sharing. Okay, so I have the ASM libraries that I am supposed to install now. If I get into grid 12c, I have something called as RPMs for rack. Yeah, so these are the RPMs that I am supposed to install. Okay, so let us start installing the RPMs. With no dependencies, and force, if at all it has already, it'll just force and install the new one. Alright, so now I have all the RPMs that I was supposed to install on the node 1. I'll have to repeat the same steps on node 2, 3 and 4 as well. So I'll have to copy this RPMs, and I'll copy this RPMs folder to the node 2 and 3 and 4, and then I'll install the RPMs in the same way like I did on node 1. So let me just copy this first. Oh, it says not a regular file. Alright, so I'll similarly copy it to node 3. and the same 5 RPMs I'll copy to node 4 as well. Alright, so now I have to go on to the node 2. It's taking time. I'll have to install all these RPMs. There are 5 RPMs. I think there are 6. Well, yeah, there are 6 RPMs. So I have to install all these 6 RPMs on the second node. Then I'll install it on the third node, and then on the fourth node. So let me get back to you soon after I install these RPMs. Okay, now that I have all the RPMs installed on all the 4 nodes, I will have to configure the ASM library drivers now. So to configure the ASM library drivers, I'll have to use configure. If I use -h, okay, so let us have a look at the parameters which shows over here. If at all I want to use anything with Oracle ASM, and if I want to configure the Oracle ASM library drivers, like I said, I have to configure the ASM library drivers now, so I'll use this configure. So what it does, it configures the Oracle Linux ASM library drivers, then init, exit, scan disk, status. I'll show it to you after I configure the drivers. Default user, it says what is the default user for the driver interface. It should actually be grid, and the group is the O install, because that is the major group, the primary group, I would say. It says start Oracle ASM library driver on boot. I would say yes. Scan for Oracle ASM disks on boot. Yes. Okay, so now if I use any of these commands, like right before that, I need to have I need to use this one, Oracle ASM exit, that is to stop the ASM library driver, and again init to load and initialize the ASM library driver. So I'll use Oracle ASM exit and then init. So after using this, I'll use this command, create disk, because I need to create disk. That is the reason I have configured the ASM library drivers. So now I'm supposed to create the disk. I'll use Oracle ASM create disk, the disk name that I would want to give. If you remember, a few minutes ago I have created two partitions in DEV SDB. One was of 40 GB and the other one was of 20 GB. So I said I would use 40 GB for data and I would use 20 GB for OCR and VD. So I'm going to use data now. So the first partition that I created, if you remember, the first partition was of 40 GB. So I would use that for data, and what all databases that I would create, and fast recovery area, and a lot of other stuff like that would actually get inside the major part of the DEV SDB, that is 40 GB. So that is data, and it is DEV, the partition number 1, DEV SDB, because inside DEV SDB we have two partitions again, DEV SDB 1 and DEV SDB 2. So I'm using data, that is 40 GB, as DEV SDB 1. So okay, it's done. The second one that I would use would be for OCR and voting disks. So I would give it as OCR underscore VD. So it will create it inside DVSDB partition, inside the DVSDB itself. Okay, now out of all these commands that you see, I'll use list disks. So it'll give me the list known Oracle ASM library disks. Oracle ASM list disks. So these are the two disks that I have just created. One is data, which is of 40 GB, and the second one is OCR-VD, which is of 20 GB. Now how do you differentiate? I mean, how do you check it is the data is of 40 GB and all that details? I'll show it to you later. But if you remember the first partition that we created, you have to actually remember it by the partition. You have to remember it by partition. So it is SDB1, which was of 40 GB. So you used it for data. And SDB2 was of 20 GB. You used it for OCR-VD. So that is how you actually remember it. And I have to do the similar steps on the node 2. Not right from creating the Oracle library drivers and all that stuff. It's just that I have to get on to node 2. I have to check. I have to just scan the disks, and it is scanning the ASM disks. It says unable to instantiate disk data. Unable to instantiate this. Okay, maybe I think I just forgot to do this. I think I need to configure Oracle ASM library drivers over here as well. So Oracle configure -I. The user would be grid. The primary group would be oinstall. Start Oracle ASM library. Yes. Start the disks on boot. Yeah. Now if I scan the disks, now it is checking for the partitions. It still says unable to instantiate. Okay, looks like I again forgot something. I was supposed to use Oracle ASM exit to stop the drivers and init to initiate the drivers. Now it is actually, now I think it should surely scan the disks. Okay, now it says instantiating disk data, instantiating disk OCR-VD. If I check by using the command list disks, I should be able to see data and OCR-VD like I did on node 1. So same applies to node 3 as well. I need to configure Oracle ASM library drivers over here. The default user is grid, primary group is oinstall. I want ASM library to start and ASM disks as well. Then Oracle ASM exit and init and scan the disks. Alright, instantiating disk data and OCR-VD. Data and OCR-VD are shown here on the third node as well. So I'm going on to the fourth node to repeat the same step. Grid is the user, oinstall is the primary group. I want the ASM library to start again. ASM disks. Then I'll type in Oracle ASM exit. Then I'll initiate the drivers and I'll use it init. Now if I check scan disks, okay, it says reloading disk partitions, instantiating data and instantiating OCR-VD. Okay, data and OCR-VD are this node can also access data and OCR-VD. So all the 4 nodes are on the same page. Alright, now that we have completed this task of all the prerequisites that we were supposed to set, one last prerequisite that we are left over with is to move the etc ntp.conf. This is the network time protocol, so that the reason why we actually move it is because you know CTSSD, there is something called as CTSSD, uh, cluster time synchronization service daemon. Excuse me. So the cluster time synchronization service daemon would start and take over and would remain in active mode while ntp.conf will get into observer mode. So see, because we are about to start the installation, the grid infrastructure installation of 12c release 1, so we need to set this, we need to deactivate this, and so that CTSSD, that CTSS, that is the cluster time synchronization service, can actually take over the NTP functionality. So NTP's functionality will not be taken care by NTP itself now. It will rather be taken care by CTSS now. Okay, so I'll just have to, I'm not doing anything, I'm just keeping it at the same location, but I'm just adding underscore backup, so uh, it won't read NTP any further. So if I start service NTP daemon restart, it is actually it is supposed to show it as failed because we have moved the location, and I'll do the same on all the nodes. Okay, the last one. That's all. So we all set to start the grid infrastructure release 12c release 1 installation. So we'll continue to look at that in the next video. So these are the basic prerequisites that we are supposed to set right before we start installing the grid infrastructure, be it 11g release 1, release 2, or 12c release 1 or release 2. So please keep all these prerequisites in mind and keep referring to this video so that you can have an understanding what all you're supposed to do it in the practice environment. You might have a little bit difference in the real time because you'll have the system images, everything pre-configured, or the network admin will actually get this done for you. But while you're practicing, you need to know everything. Okay, so we'll continue seeing the grid infrastructure installation in the next video. Thank you. Okay friends, now that we have all the nodes synced and all the nodes are able to access the disks that we have actually created for that are supposed to be shared among all the 4 nodes, and as I said that we have to set few prerequisites, so we are almost about to complete all the prerequisites. Now we are only left over with 2, so we'll look at the last second prerequisite, that is setting up the SSH connectivity between the available 4 nodes, that is first, second, third, and 4. Okay, so in order to set the SSH setup, that is the passwordless connectivity, that is the secure shell connectivity, I would say. So not all the users will have that privilege, or I would say unless and until the node 1 will not have the information of node 2, 3, and 4, then anybody who is connecting from node 1 will not be able to access the node 2, 3, or the 4th node unless and until the SSH setup is not been successfully uh, established. So I'll get into the grid user. I have something called as SSH setup over here, this folder. within the grid infrastructure installation directory, and I'll get into it. Soon after I get into it, I see an option called SSH user setup.sh. So I'll have to use this right now on all the nodes, so that it generates certain keys and sets up the SSH connectivity. So there is a procedure that we are supposed to follow, and that is what I'll take you through from here. So let us use this with SSH user setup. -hosts node 1. Since I'm using this on node 1, I would type it as node 1. Grid is the user. So it says the script, it is basically SSH is actually the script, so that is why it is referring it to as script. The script will set up SSH connectivity from host node 1 cluster.com to all the remote hosts. Okay, node 1 and node 2, as part of the setup procedure, this script will use SSH and SCP. This is not something very important. Do you want to continue and let the script make above mentioned changes? Type in yes. It says the estimated number of times the user would be prompted for a passphrase is 2. In addition, if the private or public files are also newly created, the user would have to specify the passphrase on one additional location. Enter a yes or no. I would prefer no. Now it's asking me for the password. I'll enter the password. Please enter the password, whatever password you have created for you. The user may be prompted for a password or passphrase here, since the script would be using SCP on node 1. Okay, one last time for the password. Alright, it says SSH verification is complete. Okay, we are still not done. It is just that the verification for this node of SSH has been completed. So it means there are certain keys that will ensure that this node has only those user connected who are allowed to be connected. Like it is encrypted. There are encrypted keys. So we'll straight away get into U01 home. We'll check if we have SSH over here. Yes. So we'll check the authorized keys, and it is actually I have already generated this right before I could record this video. So there are 2 keys actually reflecting, but this is not the method. There would only be 1 key reflecting. If at all there are 2 keys reflecting inside this node, you can actually go ahead and delete one. Okay, I'll delete 1 key out of this. I don't need it. Okay, so I'll just have 1. I'll get back to this and I'll get into SSH. I'll copy this SSH user setup to the node 2, 3 and 4. It is still asking me for the password. Please do not get confused, because the SSH user connectivity is not set yet. Soon after it sets up, I'll also show that particular part where it will not prompt me for the password, no matter which node I'm connecting from among these 4 nodes. Okay, I'll straight away copy it onto the 3rd node as well. Okay, it's copied on all the nodes. Let's quickly get onto this node. Let's get into the user grid. Let's check if it is copied here. SSH user setup has been copied. Now I'll run SSH user setup -hosts node 2 is what my host, I mean the local host name is, and grid is the user, sorry, user grid. Alright, the same thing what I have shown it to you previously on node 1, same information has been given here. So it says, do you want to continue? I say yes. It says, do you want the user to keep prompting, or any user who gets created public or private file as many times? So I think I don't have to say yes, I'll type in no, so that it can continue generating the key. It asks me for the password now, password again. Alright, SSH verification has been completed here as well. I'll straight away get into SSH. I'll see. Okay, so there are two keys. As I said that I have used these two nodes earlier for a different purpose. That is the reason it shows two nodes. So I'll just remove one node's information from here. I just need one node over here. That's it. Let us get on to the third node and do the same step. Okay, we have SSH user setup here. Same thing, I just have to type in yes. Now no, it's asking me for the password again. SSH verification has been completed. There will be a folder called .ssh generated. I'll have to get in here. I haven't done anything on this node, it still shows 2. It's okay. Same thing again, no. It will prompt me for the password once and again twice. That's it. An SSH, a folder called SSH will be generated. I'll get in here, I'll check for the authorized keys. It says it is actually the same code that is generated twice. Anyway, so I won't need two codes like it shows over here, so I'll get into authorized keys. I will delete the one. So now all the nodes has got their own signature. This is the name of the node, that is the only thing which we can actually identify. Or let me not show it to you that way, let us just concatenate it. So something like this, this is actually the binary information, and this is the signature of the node that has been created, which is unique. This is the fourth node's signature, and this is the third node's signature. This is the third node signature, and some binary numbers that you can see it over here. Well, we are not bothered about that. And same applies to node 2 and node 1. Now I'll get back to node 1. I'll get back to SSH. I have authorized keys over here. I'll open the authorized keys. I just have one authorized key over here, but I need to put all the authorized keys or all the signatures of the other three nodes. So I'll quickly go to the second node. I'll copy the signature of the second node from here.
So this signature is actually a token for me, which will help me to connect to the node 2 without a password. So that is what we call it as passwordless connectivity. Okay, now I'll go to the third node. I'll copy the signature of the third node as well, and I'll paste it here. Same applies to the fourth node. I'm copying the fourth node signature. So all the four nodes signature has been copied inside the authorized keys of node 1. So from node 1 I can connect to any node without I am prompted for the password. But these authorized keys are also required to be copied on node 2, 3 and 4. Okay, so I will copy the information of the same authorized keys to the node 2, 3 and 4. So I'll SCP authorized keys. Well, I don't think I need these keys anymore, so I'll remove the authorized keys from here, and then I'll copy, because I need a fresh authorized keys and there could be only one authorized key copy inside that. Okay, so now let us check. Now this authorized key has node 1's information, 2's, 3's and 4's. Okay, I'll delete authorized keys from here and from fourth node as well. Okay, I'll copy to the third node and to the fourth. Alright, all the keys has been copied. Now if I try to connect to any node, for an example, I want to connect to the fourth node, I'm straight away connected to the fourth node. Do you see this? Please concentrate here. Node 1, I'm trying to establish an SSH connectivity from being from node 1, and I'm trying to connect to the node 4. I am straight away connected to node 4. So did you notice this? So this is how we actually set up the connectivity. I am not prompted for the password at all. I'll exit from the node 4 being on node 1. I'll try to connect to node 3 now. I am not prompted for the password again. I'll exit. I'll try to connect to the node 2. I'm not prompted for the password again. Back onto the node 1 again, and I'll try to just check right before I could move on further to take the last prerequisite step. I'll try to connect to node 4. I'm not prompted for the password. Exit. I'll try to connect to node 3. I just have to type in a yes. That's it. Exit. Node 1. Yes. Exit. That yes will also not prompt me again this time. I'll straight away get connected. See, this is how it is. Exit. Back onto the node 2. Let us check the SSH connectivity if it is successfully set. It is just a cross check. I know everything has been set up correctly, but it is our duty to cross check. I'll try to connect to node 4. Alright, node 4. Again, if I try to connect, I won't be prompted for anything. I'll straight away be on the node 4 like this. So I'm on node 3. I'll try to connect to node 2 now. It says RSA, key, fingerprint and all that. Alright, connected to. I'm trying to connect to node 1. I just have to type in a yes. I don't even have, as I just said, I don't even have to type in a yes for the second time. The connection will just take over. So back to the node 3. Let me check the SSH connectivity. Let me cross check it from node 4. I'll connect to node 1. It says okay, yes, exit. I'm connecting to node 2. I just have to type in a yes. I'm on node 2 now. Exit. Let me try to connect to node 3. I just have to type in a yes, and I'm on node 3 now. I'll exit back onto the node 4. Right now, uh, I just have to, as I said that we are left over with 2 more prerequisites. So this was the prerequisite that we were supposed to complete, and it is about the SSH connectivity that we have successfully established. Now we are left over with checking the node, I would say connectivity. It's not connectivity actually, it's just that we need to run a cluster verification if all the nodes are eligible enough to get the grid installed on them. So let us get into a GFS. So I'll have to run this run cluffy.sh. So this is a pre-check for the node's eligibility, I would say. CRSINST hyphen n node 1 comma node 2 comma node 3 comma node 4. So let us wait until this check is done. It may take some time, maybe a minute or two. Okay, it started checking the user equivalence and stuff like that. It says node reachability check passed from node 1. User equivalence check passed for user grid, because we're using the we're going to install the grid infrastructure 12c release 1 using a user called grid. So that is what we created. So that check has also been passed. There are certain more checks that it will take us through, and then it should say that all the checks have passed. I hope for that. It is slowly taking us through the process of checking and verifying things. Okay, all of a sudden it started doing it quickly. Okay, ASM library configuration is also being checked. So it basically is checking all the prerequisites, I would say. Uh, check fail on node 3, 2, 1 and 4. I don't know for what is it saying. Multicast domain communication passed and total memory failed. Okay, so let us see. Free disk space check pass. I don't know why is it giving us failed. I've never seen this error ever before. Everything else is passed. User existing checks check passed. Membership check for user grid and group DBA passed. Kernel parameter check passed. All the kernel parameter checks have been passed and still coming up. Package existence check passed. Binary utilities check has been passed, and a lot of things. Okay, checking the availability of ports. Check for consistency of root users primary group passed. Network time protocol checks synchronization passed. Okay, user grid is not part of a root group check passed. Default user file creation mask check passed. Checking integrity of file etc resolve.conf across nodes. Alright, I don't know if it is correctly said or not. I might think that it would give me an error because I didn't do anything over there. Okay, so what it says, non-zero conf parameter was specified, etc sysconfig network. So we are actually not doing anything in regards with this. Apart from these things, everything else has been passed. So let us just ignore this for temporary being, and pre-check for cluster services setup was unsuccessful on all the nodes. So it is just giving it as unsuccessful because etc sysconfig network has not been set correctly. So I'm just ignoring this. The rest of the things have been successfully done. So we'll straight away start to run the run installer now. Right before that, I'll have to open another terminal and type in exos plus. So I am running the run installer for 12C grid release 1. Okay, so this is how the first page of 12c grid infrastructure looks like, which is pretty similar to 11g release 2 that I have shared with you all in the previous videos. I just have to keep this skip software updates as it is. I have to click on next. While installation, we may see few things that are different or newly added into this, but rest of the things are pretty same. There are not much changes. On the second page it says install and configure Oracle grid infrastructure. Then it says install and configure Oracle grid infrastructure for a standalone server, upgrade Oracle grid infrastructure or Oracle automatic storage management, install Oracle grid infrastructure software only. So I would select the first option, which is pre-selected actually, install and configure Oracle grid infrastructure for a cluster, and I'll click on next. Okay, now we have two types of options given over here to configure the cluster. These options were not seen in 11g release 2 run installer, because there was nothing called as flex cluster until 11g release. It is a new feature in 12c, which is actually introduced in 12c release 1, from 12c release 1 actually. So we will I will create a separate video for configuring a flex cluster, but as of now I would use this option, configure a standard cluster, and I'll click on next. Now I'll have to select the advanced installation. This option is pretty similar to what we had in 11g release 2. I'll click on next then. The default language is English. Over here there are certain things that are changed in GNS, since we are not creating a cluster with huge number of machines, so we are not going to use GNS however. So I'll just uncheck this GNS, and my scan name is node-scan. I'll click on next. It says it's validating the scan name. Okay, now I have to set up the public host names and the virtual host names over here. node2.cluster.com, node2-vip.cluster.com. The same goes to the rest of the nodes. Node 3 and node 4 is what I'm supposed to add now. So let us recheck it right before we move any further. We have 4 nodes, node 1, 2, 3 and 4. So node1.cluster.com, these are the public host names, and these are the virtual host names. Okay, now SSH connectivity, which we have already checked and which has been passed. I just have to type in the password for the grid user. The password might differ, so please put the password whatever you have set up for your grid user. So I'll click on setup then. Okay, it says successfully established passwordless passwordless SSH connectivity. Okay, now I'll click on next. This is where you might end up getting an error. I would just like to remind, if the SSH user setup is not correctly established. So the step right before we started running the run installer and setting up the SSH connection establishment is something which is absolutely important. Okay, now over here on this page we'll have to see what all is it given. Now it's like ETH0 is public, of course. ETH1 is we have only set for private. It's not for ASM and private, it is just private, because we have a separate ETH2 adapter already created for ASM. So we would use this only dedicated to ASM. So this adapter ETH2 will act as a, or probably serve for all the IP addresses that will link to ASM network. So we have three different things. I've been saying this right from the beginning of the installation while we have created the Linux operating system machines right from then. So please remember that we have three different things. This was a little different in 11c release 2 when we compare it with this, that is 12c release 1. And now we'll have to click on next. We are not using this. I don't even know what exactly this actually does. So this is only what we are using: private, public network, private network, and ASM network. Click on next. It says validating public and private interfaces across the cluster nodes. So let us give it some time to check it in the background. Okay, now it says this is GIMR, which is Grid Infrastructure Management Repository, something new introduced in 12c or from 12c release 1. So it's Grid Infrastructure Management Repository, GIMR is what I call. So I will keep this as yes. And why would I keep it as yes? What actually GIMR, Grid Infrastructure Management Repository, does is it actually enables the features like cluster health monitoring. There's something called a CHM, that is cluster health monitor. So this GIMR will actually enable the cluster health monitoring. It will also provide the historical metric repository that will simplify viewing of past performance and the diagnosis of any issues that will rise after the cluster installation. And the major requirement for letting this get configured along with the grid infrastructure now is basically to maintain the diagnostic data which the cluster health monitor collects, and it puts inside the grid infrastructure management repository. So I will keep it as yes, and then I'll click on next. Now over here we have three different storage options. It wasn't there earlier in 11g release 2. The reason why I keep comparing with the 11g release 2 over here is just because it will turn out to be a little easy for you to understand and remember few things which are absolutely different in the run installer of 11g release 2 and the 12c release 1. So we have three different options over here. Right from the first, we'll see it is the standard ASM for storage. This means if I have 4 nodes, I'll have 4 ASM instances, pretty obvious. And if I use flex ASM, as I said in the previous videos, right before I could start installing or setting up the prerequisites, I said I am going to focus on flex ASM because that is the reason I am creating the 4 nodes setup. So flex ASM is something like you'll only have ASM instances on 3 nodes. You'll not have an ASM instance running on the 4th node. I have a separate video created for it, so please don't worry, you can have a look at that video and then use this option to configure your grid using flex ASM. And this is a shared file system which we actually don't use. So in this scenario I would use flex ASM for the storage. Okay, and yeah, so it, as I just said, that ASM instances would be less in the cluster. So I'll just have to select flex ASM for storage and click on next. Now as we had two disk groups, I would choose data to get created along with the grid infrastructure, and later I'll create this, or I'll show it to you how do we use this. This is pretty similar what we used to do earlier in 11g release 2 or 11g release 1, and I'll keep the redundancy as external. And data is the disk group name. That's all. Yeah, so I'll click on next now. It's asking me for the password. This is as same as what we had earlier. I have set the password. I'm clicking on next now. I'll keep it as do not use IPMI. Now it asks me for the operating system groups. So the first one would remain as ASM admin, then ASM DBA and ASM Oper. So there are no changes that I would make over here. I'll just have to click on next. Okay, now it is asking me for installation location selection screen. So I would select U01 home is what I have created. U01 home 1210 grid. Let us keep it simple so we can lower the complications. That's all. I'll click on next. It says validating specified location. It says specified grid home is invalid. Are you sure you want to continue? I'll click on yes. I'll just ignore this. This is the inventory screen. We don't have to change anything over here. Just click on next. So this is while configuring the software, certain operations have to be performed as root user. You can choose to have the installer perform these operations automatically by specifying inputs for one of the options below. So over here it says this is something which is introduced in 12c release 1. It was not there in 11g release 2. It is actually about the scripts that we are supposed to run. We run some configuration scripts with root privileges. Basically sysadmin used to run these scripts earlier, but now installer will run these scripts. And how the installer will actually run these scripts, if we check this, okay, so it says use root user credential. So I'll have to put the root user credentials over here. So I don't have to poke my sysadmin all the time to run these scripts for me. The run installer will actually do it for me from the 12c release 1, uh, uh, you know, since it is introduced in this. So I have just put in the name of the password, and if I want to use this option called use sudo. So what is this use sudo? This is the second option over here on the screen, and use sudo is actually like sysadmin can configure the grid user and run installer will use the sudo. Sysadmin is going to configure the grid user, but run installer will use the sudo to use this to use scripts then. So if for an example, if none of these options are available, that will actually not happen. If none of these options are available, like if I don't want anything like this and I straight away click on next, then I will actually have to run these scripts manually. So that is like you know uh, the scripts will appear on the screen soon after the grid home is copied to all the nodes and all these steps have been taken by the run installer. It is as same as like what used to happen in 11g release 2. The scripts used to appear on the screen and then we used to run it manually. So this time let me try to use the option of use root credential instead of using sudo. I have never used sudo, nor do I think I would ever use it. So I prefer to use root user as the I mean use root user credential, and I have set the password. So scripts will automatically run. I don't have to run the scripts this time, nor will the scripts. It will just prompt me that scripts are ready to run. Would you like to run the script? Would you like the run installer to run this script? And I'll be given two options, yes or no. So I'll have to choose a yes, and then the run installer will only run the scripts for me at a certain time. So I'll show that to you soon after that screen appears. So as of now, the root is going to run the scripts for me, and I'm not going to run it. I'll just permit it to run the scripts for me. That's all about this screen. I'll click on next. Okay, so it's going to perform few checks. Okay, now it says looks like installer has found some issues, and some are actually the failures and some are the warnings. So what are the warnings and failures? It says failed, and is it fixable? The failed ones are actually fixable. Warning one says it's a warning. Is it fixable? Yes, it is. Warning, yes, it is fixable. So few are fixable, few are not. So let me click on fix and check again. It should actually generate a script for me. Alright, so this is what the script I was talking about. I'll have to run this script to fix the prerequisites that were not successfully completed. All fix-up operations were completed successfully. And the output message has also been a little bit modified in 12c release 1. Earlier it used to show a little different. Okay, all set. I have completed running that script. I'll have to click on OK so that the run installer will run the prerequisite checks again. Okay, so all the things that were fixed up are not listing over here anymore. These are the non-fixable stuff which I don't think we have an option to fix, though it is not recommended to leave anything that is not fixable, since we don't have an option to fix them, or any appropriate way which we can find out to fix these. So I'll click on ignore all. It also shows a fix up result. uh, it says reboot required and all that. We are not bothered about this though, so I'm just ignoring this. I'll have to click on next. It says you have chosen to ignore some of the prerequisite for this installation. This may impact product configuration. Since we have no other option, we have to do it. So I'll click on yes. Okay, so now we're on the page where it says, this is a little bit different when we compare it to 11g release 2. We never used to have an option called edit. For an example, if at all you might have forgotten to you know increase the space, or there are some space issues, or you might want to change the grid home location, you can do it from here. So at the end, by coming at the end, you may it is not good to go back all the way to level 0 and start from the beginning. If you click on edit, the run installer will actually take you to this particular page where you can change the location if at all you want. So something similar to root execution scripts, root user credential. If the credentials are actually changed, then it'll you can actually go ahead and change the credentials over here. Like if it is not root, it is something else, or if the password is changed, you can change the password as well. So things like that. And yeah, and there are a lot of other things. It is even more flexible now. For an example like this, if you have a storage type, if it is Oracle ASM, you don't want to keep the storage type as Oracle ASM, you want to change it. You want to change the redundancy of the disks. I kept it as external, but all of a sudden I realized that no, it shouldn't be external, it should be high. Then I can edit it from here and change it to high. And disk selected, I selected disk data. I did not select OCRVD. So all of a sudden I realized that I shouldn't select data and I should select OCRVD. So I can go ahead and click on edit and change it to OCRVD. So there are things like that. Port number can also be changed, public interfaces and stuff like that. So this flexibility has been given, or is something new from 12c release 1. And right before I do anything else, I have to actually check the credentials. Well, I actually don't need to check the credentials, that's fine. I just have to do that. I think that's all. So this is the final page right before the installation. If at all any changes are required to be made by a user, he or she can straight away go ahead and edit it and change it. Okay, so if you're clicking on edit, you'll straight away go back to that page wherever you're trying to change the setting from. From there you will not come back straight away to this page, you'll come back like you're installing it from the beginning. Okay, that's all. I'll have to click on install now. And while the installation is going on, just to let you all know, I have a 3GB machine. One machine is of 3GB. Every machine is actually of 3GB. So it depends. If you have an SSD, it'll not take a long time for the installation. If you have a hard disk, then it may take time like an hour or two. So it actually depends. So just patiently wait until it gets installed completely. It may also prompt you for the scripts. So that's all. We'll wait until the scripts until it prompts until the run installer will prompt me for the scripts to run, and I'll show that page soon after we get there. Okay, the rest of the things will still remain the same. It is extracting the files, then it will copy it to the rest of the nodes, that is node 2, 3 and 4, and then it'll start running the script, right? So I'll continue. I'll probably put a momentary pause over here until the scripts are ready to run. Okay, so finally at 79%, when the run installer reaches at 79%, it gives you a notification, or a notification message appears on the screen that says configuration scripts generated by the installer need to be run as a privileged user. The user is root. Installer will run these scripts using the privileged user credentials provided earlier. So it is talking about the credentials that I provided while I was choosing to run the script using the run installer, not by myself. So it says, are you sure you want to continue? I would select yes. And from now I'll wait until the scripts gets completely configured, or until the scripts run on all the 4 nodes. So it says node 1 configuration started, and then it'll say node 2 configuration, and then 3 and 4 and things like that. Then execute root script on all nodes will give a green check over here, and then all this script execution will get completed, and then we'll be good to go. So let us wait until these things gets completed, and then let's see what are we required to do later. So like I said, node 1's configuration has been completed, and now node 3 configuration has started. So soon after node 3 configuration ends, I think it will start configuring node 2 and then node 4. So we'll still have to wait until this gets completed. And as I just said, that the script that we are actually supposed to run, or Aura inst.sh and root.sh, until 11g release 2 we used to run it manually, so we don't have to run any scripts. So please keep that in mind. Run installer will actually do that for us from 12c release 1. So all the scripts that were supposed to be run on all the nodes have been successfully completed. Execute root scripts have been completed, is what you see, succeeded. Execute root script on all the nodes is also succeeded. So what is left over now is the configuration of grid infrastructure for a cluster, and a few more components that are supposed to get completed or configured on all the 4 nodes. Okay, so finally I got a message, and the run installer says that Oracle cluster verification utility has failed. Since all the components that were required to be configured have been configured successfully already, as you can see it here on the screen with the green marks. It's just that Oracle grid infrastructure for cluster and cluster verification utility has not been successfully configured. Therefore I can ignore this by clicking on OK, and I can skip it. After clicking on skip, I can click on next. It says software installation was successful, but some configuration assistants failed, were cancelled or skipped. Because they were failed, I have skipped them. So are you sure you want to continue? I'll click on yes. Alright, the installation of grid infrastructure for a cluster was successful, but some configuration assistants failed, or cancelled or skipped, is what it says. So I'm fine with it. I can go ahead and close this. Alright, I am left over to create the grid.env, that is the environment file, which I would create right away. So I'll open the grid.env and I'll have to put in some details over here. And now export path is equal to dollar grid underscore home. I'll change the permissions for it. Alright, now I'll copy this file to the other nodes as well, but right before that I need to check something. Okay, so it's 12.10, it's not 12.01, so I have made a mistake here. I was supposed to put 12.10. Alright, now I'll copy this grid.env file to the to all the other nodes. Alright, since we have the SSH connectivity set up, it is not prompting me for or probably asking me for any password. I hope you remember that. I'm copying it to the node 4 now. That's it. And I'll copy this grid.env to user1 home 12 grid. Alright, I'll log in as a grid user. I'll export the grid.env. Now I'll open another terminal. I need to check the services now. CRSCTL check cluster -all. It says okay, CRSCTL check cluster -all. Doesn't give me any information. Looks like there's something is missing. Excuse me. Okay, so we'll check the services as I just said. Looks like it's not working over here due to the permissions and things like that. So let's not bother about that. Please ignore it. I have exported or sourced the grid.env file, and then I got into cd bin. and then I use the same command crsctl check cluster hyphen all. So this shows on the node 1 cluster CRS, that is the cluster ready services, is online, cluster synchronization services is online, and the event manager is online as well. Same applies on the second node and on the third node and on the fourth node as well. So this means the cluster that we have just configured has been successfully implemented, and all the services are online. CRSCTL stat res -t. If we want to check the services in detail, like services like this, aura data.dg, listener, and there are a lot of other things. One more thing that I would also want to show you to all over here is this particular column, state details. This state details shows stable. Everywhere it shows stable. This column wasn't there earlier until 11g release 2. Now state details have been added as a new column, and it just shows, it's nothing new, it's nothing complicated, it just shows the stability of the services on the available nodes. And these are the cluster resources that we have: node 1 VIP, and 2 node 2 VIP, node 3 and node 4 VIP, and scan VIP over here. We have scan listener over here, which is online and stable. MGMT listener, I'll get into this MGMT listener details a little later, but just to show it to you now, all the things are working fine. And flex ASM, as I just said, that aura.asm over here, it shows online, online and online, okay, on node 1, node 4 and node 2, and it is stable. So as I said, if you refer to the video which I have created exclusively explaining the flex ASM features, will surely include the details of this, then you will understand that it only shows, why is it actually showing only 3 instances of Oracle ASM, that is the flex ASM to be more specific, in 12c release 1 cluster. It is actually only 3 instances in the entire cluster. No matter if you have 64 nodes or 100 nodes, the instances would only remain limited up to 3. Okay, and if you want to only check the details of ASM, then you might use this command srv status ASM. So it exactly gives you the same information. ASM is running on node 1, node 4 and node 2. This is the same information which is displayed over here. It is running on node 1, node 4. Alright, I'm sorry about that. It is running on node 1 over here, node 4 and node 2. Same information is being displayed over here as well. But if you specifically want to see only about ASM, you can go ahead and use this. Okay, so this is all about installing and configuring the grid infrastructure. And right before we move further, and I will surely include the details of installing and configuring Oracle database. That is the mandatory step after this. So we'll check one last background process that will help us to check the ASM details. Alright, so if you just specifically look at ASM, this is the background process of ASM. Since we are on node 1 and it says ASM is running on node 1, node 4 and node 2. If you go on node 2 and try to use the same thing, ps-ef smon, it doesn't give you any details of SMON over here, but it rather shows that ASM4 instance is running over there. Alright, but it indeed will give you more information if you go on to the node 4. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so we'll check about all these things a little later in the upcoming videos. So this is all about checking the services and the details, and as I just said that it has a new section now being added with the status details called stable. So it basically means ASM is stable on all the 3 nodes where it is running, and same applies to the other services as well. And as I just mentioned, at MGMT listener and MGMT database, I'll get into it in details in the upcoming videos. So until now, we'll just go through a quick recap. What all have we done right from the beginning? We have installed SAN, as you can see it here on the screen, and so that we can consider SAN as a storage area network. And we have added 2 disks, one for SAN's internal usage, and one for as an iSCSI disk for shared storage as a raw device. And then I haven't included the steps of installing Linux. So then we have installed Linux machine, and then we have cloned 3 more machines using that. So as you can see it over here, 1, 2 and 3 and 4. So I have cloned all these machines, all these 3 machines from node 1. And then there is a new thing called as an Ethernet adapter, which we have set, and altogether we have 3 Ethernet adapters now: public, private and ASM. So altogether and in the practice mode you need to assign 3 GB for one node at least. And then we have you know started the node, and then we have changed or probably added the IP addresses. And after adding the IP addresses, we have checked if the node's connectivity is properly set or not. Then we have accessed SAN through the GUI mode to create the logical unit numbers. And after we created the logical unit numbers, we have created the partitions under SAN by using GUI, and we have provided the access control access control to it, and a lot of other things like that. And then we started creating the partitions into it by using fdisk-l. And then we have created users and groups, various users and various groups. And then we installed the RPMs, the 6 RPMs that are mandatory or required to run the ASM perfectly on the grid infrastructure for 12C release 1. And then we have created the disks on ASM like data and OCRVD namely. And then we have started then we've we have established the SSH connectivity between all the nodes. And then we have checked if all the prerequisites have been perfectly set. And then we have started installing the grid infrastructure. So this is where we end the grid infrastructure installation and stuff. And in the next video I'll cover the installation of Oracle database, that is where we will create the pluggable database and container database and a lot of other things that we'll see in the near future. So this is all about grid infrastructure and all the variations that we have now, or the new features that we have now in 12C release 1 when we compare it to 11G release 2. So everything that I remember and is mandatory has been included in this video, and that's all about it. Thank you for watching.